The emergency alarm screamed through the bridge of the Alteron starship. Peaceful Dawn Commander Tejo jumped from his chair and rushed to the main display screen. His heart pounded as red warning lights flashed all around him. The message on the screen made his blood freeze. Human ship detected on Nexus Prime emergency signal. Active. Every alien in the galaxy knew about humans. They were the monsters that lived on the edge of space, the creatures so dangerous that even the bravest warriors would not go near. Their homeworld Earth was marked as a forbidden zone on every star map. The stories about humans were told to frighten children and make grown aliens check their door locks twice. Captain Mi Young ran onto the bridge, her blue skin pale with fear. She had heard the alarm from 3 decks below. The other crew members followed behind her, their eyes wide with terror. Everyone knew what the alarm meant. A human ship had crashed, and they were the closest rescue vessel. Commander, we have to report this and leave immediately, Mi Young said, her voice shaking. Someone else can handle this. We should not get involved with humans. Tejo looked at his crew. He had served with these aliens for 10 years. They had faced space pirates, dangerous storms, and engine failures together, but he had never seen them this scared. The fear in their eyes was real and deep. It came from years of hearing stories about the terrible humans. The humans were said to be death incarnate. They lived on a world so deadly that it tried to kill them every single day. Their planet had poisonous air, burning deserts, frozen wastelands, and creatures that could tear apart metal with their bare claws. Yet somehow humans not only survived, but thrived. They turned their world's deadliest animals into pets. They drank liquids that would dissolve alien stomachs. They could survive in space longer than most species could hold their breath. But what made humans truly terrifying was their intelligence. Combined with their violence, they were said to be tactical geniuses who could turn anything into a weapon. They could kill with their bare hands or with tools so advanced that entire fleets would surrender rather than face them. Humans were relentless in battle, never giving up, never showing mercy until their enemies were completely defeated. The story said that humans had no fear. They would charge into situations that would make other species run away screaming. A human would fight a creature 10 times their size just for the challenge. They were said to laugh at danger and smile when facing death. Their battle cry was so terrifying that some species would surrender. Just from hearing it, Navigation Officer Hyen Wu pulled up the scan results on his screen. Commander, the crash site shows 1 life sign still active. The human survived a crash that should have killed anyone. The ship is completely destroyed, but somehow they are still moving around inside. This news made the crew even more frightened. If a human could survive a crash that destroyed their ship, what else could they survive? The stories told of humans walking through explosions, swimming in acid, and fighting for days without food or water. They seemed to be impossible to kill. Communications Officer Jinho spoke up from his station. Commander, I am detecting strange energy readings from the crash site. The human appears to be moving heavy debris. The readings suggest they are lifting objects that would require our heavy machinery to move. The bridge fell silent. Everyone stared at the readings on the screen. The human was not just alive, but actively working in the wreckage. They were lifting metal beams that weighed several tons each, as if they were made of paper. This display of strength confirmed their worst fears about human capabilities. Dr. So Young, the ship's medical officer, entered the bridge. She had been studying the scan results from her medical station. Commander, the human's vital signs are completely normal. Despite being in a major crash, they show no signs of injury or distress. In fact, their heart rate suggests they are calm and focused. This information disturbed Tejo even more. A being that could remain calm after a deadly crash while lifting massive objects was clearly not like any other species in the galaxy. The human's reputation for being unstoppable seemed to be true. We should call for a military escort before we approach. Mi Young suggested maybe a full battle group would be safer. The Galactic Council has protocols for dealing with humans. They say never approach them alone, but Tejo found himself curious about these legendary creatures. All his life he had heard stories about the terrible humans, but he had never actually seen one. What if the stories were exaggerated? What if humans were not as dangerous as everyone believed? This might be their only chance to learn the truth about humanity. The scan shows the human is not attacking anything. Teho said slowly. They seem to be searching through the wreckage. Maybe they are looking for something important. Maybe they need help. The crew looked at their commander as if he had lost his mind. Helping a human was not something anyone had ever considered. The idea seemed completely insane. Humans were supposed to help themselves. They were the ultimate survivors who needed no assistance from anyone, sir. With respect, Dr. So-young said, humans are unpredictable. We do not know what they might do. If we approach, they might see us as a threat or as prey. The medical files I have studied suggest they are natural predators. Teho walked to the main viewing screen and looked out at the stars. He had spent his entire career exploring the unknown parts of space. He had always believed that knowledge was more valuable than fear. Every species they had ever met had seemed dangerous at first, but most had turned out to be reasonable beings. Look at the readings again, he said to his crew. The human has been active for 6 hours since the crash. In all that time, they have not tried to send any aggressive signals. They have not activated any weapon systems. They seem to be focused entirely on searching through their ship. Maybe they are looking for survivors, Jinho suggested, or maybe they are trying to repair their communication system so they can call for help. Idea that a human might need help seemed strange to everyone on the bridge. Humans were supposed to be completely self-sufficient. But the evidence suggested that this human was alone and possibly stranded on a hostile world. Commander Myung said carefully, what if this is a trap? What if the human is pretending to be helpless to lure us closer? The stories say humans are very clever. They might be using our curiosity against us. Teho considered this possibility. It was true that humans were said to be master strategists. But something about the situation felt different. The human had been working alone for hours, with no sign that they knew anyone was watching. If this was a trap, it was a very patient one. Set course for the crash site, he finally decided. We will maintain a safe distance and observe. If the human shows any aggressive behavior, we will retreat immediately. But we need to see what is really happening down there. The crew reluctantly followed their commander's orders, but everyone remained on high alert as their ship moved toward the unknown encounter with humanity's first representative in known space. Marine Sergeant Dongwoo wiped sweat from his forehead as he moved another piece of twisted metal from the wreckage. His transport ship was completely destroyed, but his training had kept him alive. The crash had been bad, but he had survived worse. During his military exercises back on Earth, what concerned him more was the alien ship that had just landed near his crash site. Dongwoo had studied alien contact protocols during his diplomatic training at the Marine Academy. The instructors had always said that first contact would be the most important moment in human history. Everything he did in the next few minutes would shape how aliens viewed his entire species for generations to come. Through the smoke and debris, he could see the alien vessel clearly. It was beautiful in a way that human ships were not. The hull seemed to flow like water, and it landed without making any noise at all. The technology was obviously advanced far beyond anything humans had developed. His military instincts wanted him to find cover and assess the threat level. The aliens might be hostile, and he was alone with limited weapons. But his diplomatic education reminded him that sometimes showing strength meant showing restraint. Making the wrong move now could start a war between species. The alien ship sat silent for several minutes. Dongwoo could imagine the discussion happening inside. They were probably debating whether to approach him or call for backup. He decided to make the first move by showing them he was not a threat. Slowly and deliberately, he walked away from the wreckage and into the open area between his crash site and their ship. He raised both hands high above his head in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. Then he stopped walking and waited. The alien ship remained closed for another 10 minutes. Dongwoo stayed perfectly still with his hands raised. He could feel eyes watching him from inside the vessel. He tried to project calm and peaceful intentions through his body language and facial expressions. Finally, a section of the alien hull opened with a soft hissing sound. A tall figure emerged, and Dongwoo got his first look at an intelligent alien species. The being was humanoid, but clearly not human. Its skin was blue and seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. Its head was larger than a human's, and its eyes were much bigger. The alien wore what appeared to be a uniform of some kind and carried no visible weapons. It moved carefully and kept its distance, but Dongwoo could see curiosity in its large eyes. The creature was studying him just as carefully as he was studying it. More Aliens appeared behind the first one. They seemed to be having a discussion using hand gestures and sounds that Dongwu could not understand. He counted 6 aliens total, all watching him with obvious fascination and fear. Dongwu began the first contact protocol he had memorized using his finger. He drew numbers in the dirt, 1 line, then 2 lines, then 3 lines. The aliens watched intently as he demonstrated basic mathematics. He pointed to 1 rock, then 2 rocks, then 3 rocks. The lead alien seemed to understand immediately. It produced a device that projected holographic symbols in the air. The symbols changed as the alien manipulated the device, showing different numbers and patterns. Dongwu nodded enthusiastically when he recognized the mathematical concepts. Within an hour they had established basic counting and simple addition. The aliens' technology was impressive, but Dongwu noticed they seemed surprised by how quickly he learned their number system. They had apparently expected humans to be less intelligent. As the day progressed, the aliens became less afraid. More of them emerged from their ship to observe the communication attempts. One younger alien seemed particularly curious about Dongwu and kept making sounds that might have been questions. Dongwu decided to share some of his emergency supplies. He pulled out a ration bar and demonstrated eating it. Then he offered pieces to the aliens. They examined the food carefully using small devices to scan it before declining politely. Next, he showed them his personal tablet, which contained photos of his family and friends back on Earth. The aliens gathered around the device with obvious fascination. They seemed particularly interested in the pictures of children and elderly humans. The images appeared to surprise them greatly. One alien kept pointing at a photo of Dongwu's grandmother and making excited sounds to the others. They seemed amazed that humans cared for their elderly family members. When Dongwu showed them pictures of his sister playing with her pet dog, the aliens became even more excited. They had clearly heard stories about humans keeping deadly predators as companions, but seeing the gentle interaction between human and animal seemed to confuse them. The breakthrough in communication came when the aliens began struggling to move a heavy container from their ship. Dongwu watched them work for several minutes as 3 aliens tried unsuccessfully to lift the object. Without thinking, he stepped forward to help. The aliens froze in terror as he approached, but Dongwu moved slowly and kept his hands visible. When he reached the container, he smiled at the aliens and gestured for them to step back. Then he lifted the heavy object easily and carried it to where they wanted it placed. The silence that followed was profound. The aliens stared at him with expressions that seemed to mix fear with something else. Dongwu realized they had expected him to display his strength aggressively, but instead he had used it to help them. From that moment, everything changed. The aliens began approaching him more freely. They showed him their equipment and tried to explain how various devices worked. Dongwu shared his own tools, including a multi-purpose knife that fascinated them with its various functions. As evening approached, the aliens set up a camp near their ship. They had apparently decided to stay overnight rather than leave immediately. Dongwu took this as a positive sign. They were no longer afraid that he would attack them in their sleep. The lead alien whom Dongwu had started thinking of as commander approached him as the sun set. The alien made gestures that seemed to indicate gratitude, then pointed to Dongwu and made sounds that might have been an attempt at his Nama. Dongwu pointed to himself and said clearly, Dongwu. Then he pointed to the alien and waited. The alien seemed to understand and made a series of sounds. Dongwu tried to repeat the sounds and the alien nodded approvingly. As the stars came out, both species sat around a small light that the aliens had activated. They continued trying to communicate using gestures, drawings, and the few words they had managed to teach each other. Dongwu realized that this moment was historic. He was participating in humanity's first peaceful contact with an alien civilization. The responsibility was enormous, but he felt confident that his training had prepared him well. The aliens seemed to be having their own realizations. Their body language had completely changed from the fearful creatures who had first emerged from their ship. They now seemed curious and even friendly. Before settling down for the night, the commander alien approached Dongwu one more time. It made a series of gestures that seemed to indicate respect or appreciation, then retreated to join its companions. As Dongwu prepared his sleeping area, he reflected on the day's events. He had successfully made first contact without violence or misunderstanding. The aliens were clearly intelligent and appeared to be peaceful. What surprised him most was how wrong their initial assumptions about each other had been. The aliens had expected a monster and found a helpful neighbor. He had expected the unknown and found curious scientists. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as they continued to build communication and understanding, but tonight both species would sleep peacefully, knowing they had found friends instead of enemies among the stars. Captain Mi Young could not believe what she was seeing after 3 days with the human. Everything they had been told about humans was wrong. Yes, Dongwu was incredibly strong and seemed to adapt to any situation, but he was also patient, kind, and surprisingly gentle. The human had been living near their camp for 3 days now and had not shown any signs of the legendary human aggression. When junior crew member Hyun Woo accidentally knocked over a piece of important equipment yesterday, the human had actually helped repair it instead of becoming angry. Mi Young watched as Dongwu demonstrated how to tie knots using pieces of rope from his survival kit he was teaching Hyun Woo and 2 other crew members. His movements were precise and careful. He repeated each step multiple times until they understood. What amazed her most was his patience. The story said humans were quick to anger and violence, but this human seemed to have unlimited patience. He never raised his voice or showed frustration even when the aliens made mistakes. The real shock had come during their meal preparation yesterday. Evening was approaching and their food supplies were running low. The prepackaged rations they carried were designed for short missions, but they had been stranded for longer than expected. Dong Wu had noticed their problem without being told anything. He simply walked into the nearby forest and disappeared for 2 hours. When he returned, he carried an armload of what looked like local plants and roots. Using their improved communication system of gestures and simple words, he showed them which plants were safe to eat. He demonstrated how to prepare them properly and even showed them how to make the tough roots more digestible by cooking them in a certain way. Dr. So Young had been terrified to try the alien plants, but her scanner showed they were not only safe but actually more nutritious than their emergency rations. The human had somehow identified edible vegetation on a planet he had never seen before. Commander Taeho was documenting everything for his report to the Galactic Council. How could he explain that the supposedly savage human was teaching them survival skills? The human had even made tools from crash debris to help them repair their communication equipment. Every action showed intelligence, creativity, and most surprisingly, a genuine desire to help rather than dominate. The human seemed to understand that they were stranded and needed assistance, but he never made them feel weak or inferior. The most shocking moment came on the 3rd day when Dr. So Young became sick from eating some contaminated rations. She had been trying to save the good food for the others and had eaten something that was past its expiration date. The human immediately went into what appeared to be a medical emergency protocol. He moved quickly but calmly, checking her symptoms and vital signs. He could not understand their medical equipment, but he knew basic field medicine from his military training, using cold water from a nearby stream. He helped bring down her fever. He made her comfortable and stayed with her throughout the night, monitoring her condition. When their medical scanner finally worked properly the next morning, it showed that his care had prevented her condition from becoming serious. The sight of this supposedly dangerous predator carefully tending to an alien doctor completely destroyed everything they thought they knew about humans. His gentle touch and obvious concern for her well-being showed a side of humanity no one had ever described. Dongwu seemed to understand their confusion. Through their improving communication, he tried to explain that humans had 2 sides, warrior and protector. The stories they had heard focused only on human combat abilities during wartime. He showed them more pictures from his tablet, images of human doctors working in hospitals, teachers helping children learn, and artists creating beautiful works. He explained that the same strength that made humans dangerous in battle also made them protective of those who needed help. The human described how his own training included both military combat and diplomatic negotiation. He was taught to fight when necessary, but also to find peaceful solutions whenever possible. The goal was to protect others, not to dominate the mass. Trust grew between them. Dongwu began sharing more about human culture. He hummed melodies that he said were human music. The sounds were strange, but somehow pleasant to alien ears. He explained that humans used music to express emotions and bring people together using sticks and stones. He created patterns in the dirt that he called human art. He showed them how humans used visual symbols to communicate ideas and feelings. The aliens were fascinated by the complexity of human creative expression. He even taught them simple human games using rocks and drawn lines in the sand. The games required strategy and cooperation rather than strength or aggression. The aliens found them entertaining and surprisingly challenging. Commander Tejo realized they had discovered something that would change everything about galactic politics. The human had proven that the terrifying stories were only part of the truth. Yes, humans were capable of incredible violence, but they were also capable of incredible compassion. The human explained that his species had learned long ago that cooperation achieved more than conquest. They had discovered that helping others often led to better results than fighting them. The strongest human communities were those that worked together. What disturbed Tejo most was realizing how much fear had shaped galactic policy toward humans. The entire galaxy had been preparing for war with a species that apparently preferred peace. The misunderstanding could have led to a catastrophic conflict. Mi Young approached her commander as they watched Dongwu teaching Haiyan Wu how to start a fire without modern tools. The human was patiently explaining each step and encouraging the young alien when he struggled. Sir, she said quietly, what are we going to tell the council back home? How do we explain that everything we believed about humans was wrong? Tejo watched the human laugh as Han Wu finally succeeded in creating a small flame. The sound was warm and friendly, not the terrifying battle cry they had expected to hear. We tell them the truth, he replied. We tell them that humans are not the monsters we thought they were. They are people just like us. They can be dangerous when threatened, but they prefer to be helpful when possible. Human looked up from the fire and smiled at them both. Aliens felt something they had never expected to feel around a human. They felt safe. The legendary Deathbringer was actually making them feel protected rather than threatened. As evening approached, Dongwu helped them prepare their camp for the night. He checked their equipment, made sure their shelter was secure, and even gathered extra firewood. He seemed to genuinely care about their well-being. Dr. So Young, who was feeling much better thanks to the humans' care, approached to thank him. She made gestures of gratitude and tried to say thank you in his language. He responded by patting her shoulder gently and saying something that sounded reassuring. The transformation was complete. The aliens, who had been terrified of humans 3 days ago, now considered this human to be a friend and protector. They had learned that humanity was not their enemy, but potentially their greatest ally. Tomorrow they would try to contact their ship and arrange rescue, but tonight they would sleep peacefully, knowing that the human would help keep them safe. The galaxy would never be the same once this story spread. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called within hours of receiving Commander Tejo's report. Representatives from over 300 worlds gathered in the Great Assembly Hall on Concordia Station. The air was thick with tension and fear. Ambassador Jin'e of the Alteron delegation sat at her assigned seat, clutching the datapad containing the full report. She had read it 17 times and still could not believe what it described: a human who helped aliens instead of destroying them. It seemed impossible around her. She could hear whispered conversations in dozens of languages. All the representatives were discussing the same thing. What did this mean for galactic security? Had the humans changed their nature, or was this some kind of elaborate trap? Chancellor Kang Min of the Hegemony Coalition stood at the central podium, his voice booming across the assembly. This so-called friendly human is obviously a trick, he declared. Humans are known for their cunning. They are probably studying our weaknesses while pretending to be peaceful. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the hall. Many representatives nodded their heads. They had spent generations preparing for the eventual human invasion. The idea that humans might not be planning an invasion was almost harder to accept than the original threat. Elder Wu Jin of the ancient assembly raised his gnarled hand for attention. I have lived for 4 centuries, he said slowly. In all that time I have never heard of humans showing mercy or kindness. This report must be examined very carefully. Dao Minjie from the Viridian Science Collective had been studying the technical data included in the report. The humans displayed strength levels consistent with our intelligence files, she announced. But their behavior patterns are completely different from our predictions. The debate continued for hours. Some representatives insisted the report was fake, others worried that this human was somehow different from the rest of his species. The Zephyrian Trade Federation was particularly vocal, claiming that human kindness was probably a form of psychological warfare trade. Minister Junho presented his concerns to the assembly. If humans can make us trust them, they can infiltrate our society, he argued. They could learn our secrets and weaknesses, then when we least expect it, they could strike. But Ambassador Jin'e had noticed something important in the data: the humans' vital signs during his interactions with the rescue team showed genuine care and concern. The biometric readings indicated real emotions, not deception. She stood to address the assembly. Fellow representatives, I have analyzed the biological data extensively. The human stress levels decreased when he was helping our people, increase when they were in danger. This suggests genuine protective instincts. The draconian military representative, General Young Sik, slammed his clawed hand on his desk. That proves nothing, he growled. Humans are known to be excellent actors. They could fake any emotion if it serves their purposes. As the debate raged, reports began arriving from other parts of the galaxy. A human research vessel had been detected near the Kepler system. Instead of attacking local settlements, they had actually helped repair a damaged space station. More reports followed. A group of humans in the Vega sector had shared advanced water purification technology with struggling colonies. Another human ship had rescued miners trapped in an asteroid collapse. Each new report added to the confusion. Representatives who had been certain about human evil were beginning to question everything. The pattern was clear: humans were helping rather than harming wherever they appeared. Ambassador Jin'e realized that the galaxy's understanding of humans was based on incomplete information. The terrifying stories had focused only on human military capabilities during ancient conflicts. Nobody had considered what humans might be like during peacetime. She requested permission to address the full assembly. The chamber fell silent as she approached the central podium. She took a deep breath, knowing that her next words could shape the future of galactic civilization. Fellow beings, she began, we have made a terrible mistake. We have judged an entire species based on stories about their worst moments. We know humans are capable of great violence, but we never asked if they choose violence when other options exist. The assembly listened carefully as she continued. The evidence suggests that humans use their strength to protect others rather than dominate them. They appear to be natural guardians who fight only when fighting is necessary to defend the innocent. Chancellor Kongmin interrupted. That is exactly what they want us to think, he shouted. The moment we lower our guard, they will show their true nature. Every species in the galaxy will be enslaved or destroyed. But Elder Wu Jin had been thinking deeply about the reports. I wonder, he said thoughtfully, if we have been preparing for war with a species that prefers peace. If so, we may have created the very threat we feared. Dr. Minjae presented additional analysis. The humans' technological development patterns suggest a defensive rather than offensive focus. Their weapons are designed to protect their territory, not to conquer others. As the debate continued, Ambassador Jin'e realized that fear had poisoned galactic thinking about humans for too long. The entire Council had been planning military responses to a species they had never actually tried to communicate with. The breakthrough came when Communications Director Jin Ho announced that they had successfully established quantum communication with the human. They could actually speak to him directly. The human had agreed to address the council and answer their questions. The announcement caused chaos in the assembly hall. Some representatives demanded immediate evacuation, claiming it was too dangerous to allow human communication. Others insisted this was their chance to learn the truth about human intentions. Ambassador Jin'e saw this as the opportunity they needed. If the human could speak to the council directly, they could judge his intentions for themselves. It would be the first time most council members had ever interacted with a living human, but the stakes could not be higher. If the human said the wrong thing, or if the council misunderstood his intentions, it could lead to a galactic war that would destroy countless worlds. Chancellor Kang Min demanded that the communication session be heavily guarded with military forces standing by. If the human showed any signs of aggression, they wanted to be ready to respond. Elder Wu Jin suggested a different approach. Instead of treating this as a potential threat, they should treat it as a diplomatic opportunity. The humans' willingness to speak with them suggested peaceful intentions. The vote was close, but the council agreed to allow the human to address them directly. Security would be present, but the focus would be on communication rather than confrontation. Ambassador Jin was chosen to moderate the session. Her experience with the technical data and her balanced perspective made her the logical choice. The responsibility was enormous, but she felt confident that this was humanity's best chance to prove their peaceful intentions. As preparations began for the historic communication session, Ambassador Jin hoped that both sides would have the wisdom to choose understanding over fear. The future of galactic civilization might depend on the next few hours. The human had already proven he could be reasonable and helpful. Now it was time for the galaxy to prove they could be reasonable too. The coming conversation would determine whether humanity would be welcomed as friends or feared as enemies. The great assembly hall on Concordia Station had never been more crowded. Representatives from every corner of the galaxy had gathered to witness this historic moment. Many wore protective suits, even though they would only be seeing a holographic projection of the human. The fear was still that strong. Dongwu appeared on the massive central display, and complete silence fell over the assembly. He looked exactly as the intelligence reports had described him: bipedal and relatively small compared to many species, but there was something in his eyes that suggested hidden strength. He wore what appeared to be a dress version of his military uniform. The choice was deliberate, showing respect for the formal occasion while making no attempt to hide his soldier background. Many representatives noted the diplomatic balance in his appearance. Ambassador Jin activated the translation matrix and spoke carefully. Human representative, we welcome you to address the Galactic Council. Please tell us about your species and your intentions. Dongwu stood at attention for a moment, then relaxed into a more casual posture. The change seemed calculated to appear less threatening while still maintaining dignity. He looked directly into the camera. As if making eye contact with each representative. Honored delegates, he began, his voice calm and clear. I understand that my species has a reputation throughout the galaxy. I will not pretend that humans cannot be dangerous when we need to be. We are capable of great violence when we or others are threatened. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Many representatives had expected denials or lies. The humans' honest admission of their combat capabilities was surprising, but he continued, our strength comes from knowing when to fight and when to help. We learned long ago that the greatest victories come through cooperation, not conquest. We prefer to build relationships rather than destroy them. Chancellor Kongmin stood abruptly. If humans are truly peaceful, he demanded, why are your military capabilities so advanced? Why do you spend so much effort developing weapons of war? Dongwu nodded as if he had expected this question. On my world we have a saying, he replied, the best way to avoid a fight is to be so prepared for one that your enemies would rather talk. Your question assumes that military strength must be used for aggression. The human gestured to something off-screen. Our weapons exist to protect our families, our communities, and our allies. We train for war so that we can preserve peace. A strong defense often prevents the need for any offense at all. Elder Wujin leaned forward with interest. And what of expansion? Young human, what are your species' plans for spreading through the galaxy? Do you intend to claim new territories? This question seemed to please Dongwu, and his expression brightened. Honored elder, humans are explorers by nature. We have dreamed of meeting other intelligent species for thousands of years. Now that we know we are not alone in the universe, we hope to learn from others. He paused thoughtfully. We want to understand the galaxy's diverse cultures and perhaps share what we have learned about survival, adaptation, and cooperation. We have no interest in claiming territory that belongs to others. Trade Minister Junho interrupted skeptically, but surely you want something from us. What do humans gain from these peaceful interactions? What is your true motivation? Dongwu's answer was simple and seemed to catch many representatives off guard. We want friends, he said quietly. We have been alone in our corner of space for so long, dreaming of this day. Meeting you proves that the universe is full of wonders we never imagined. Honesty in his voice was unmistakable. Several representatives exchanged glances. They had prepared for demands, threats, or complex political negotiations. They had not prepared for a species that simply wanted friendship. Dr. Min-jae asked the next question. Human representative, our intelligence suggests your species is highly adaptable and resourceful. How do we know you will not use these abilities to take advantage of other species? Dongwu smiled for the first time during the session. Doctor, you are absolutely correct. Humans are adaptable and resourceful. These traits helped us survive on a world that constantly tried to kill us. But we learned to use these abilities to help our communities thrive. He became more serious. Adaptation means learning to work with what you have. Resourcefulness means finding solutions that benefit everyone. Humans discovered that helping others often helps yourself. The species that cooperate with us become stronger, not weaker. General Hyung-sik of the Draconian military had been silent until now, but finally spoke. What guarantees can you offer that humans will remain peaceful? What stops your species from changing its behavior once you are established in galactic society? The question seemed to strike at the heart of galactic fears about humanity. Dongwu considered his answer carefully before responding. General, he said, respectfully, I cannot speak for every human. Just as you cannot speak for every member of your species, but I can tell you about human nature. We are protective of those we care about. We form bonds that last lifetimes. He gestured again. We have a concept called honor. It means keeping your word even when it costs you personally. Humans who break their promises to friends become outcasts in our society. We value trust above almost everything else. The session continued for 2 hours. Representatives asked about human technology, culture, military organization, and social structure. Dongwu answered every question, honestly, often providing more information than was requested. His responses painted a picture of a species that was indeed dangerous in combat, but only used violence as a last resort. He described human societies built on cooperation, mutual aid, and protection of the weak. The turning point came when Ambassador Jin-A asked about human families. Dongwu spoke warmly about his parents, his sister, and their children. He explained how humans cared for their elderly and protected their young. The pictures he shared showed humans helping each other through natural disasters, working together on complex projects, and celebrating achievements as communities. The images contradicted every stereotype about selfish, violent humans. As the session neared its end, Elder Wu Jin asked the final question. If the Galactic Council were to welcome humanity, what would be your first request as our newest member? Dongwu's answer surprised everyone. We would ask for the chance to prove ourselves through service, he said. If other species need help with dangerous missions or difficult problems, humans would volunteer. We want to earn our place in galactic society. The session ended with Dongwu expressing gratitude for the opportunity to speak. He promised that humanity would respect whatever decision the council made, but hoped they would choose to give his species a chance to prove their good intentions. After the communication ended, the assembly sat in stunned silence. Many representatives had to completely reconsider everything they thought they knew about humans. The species they had feared might actually be exactly what the galaxy needed. Ambassador Jin-A looked around the hall at her fellow delegates. The fear was still there, but it was now mixed with curiosity and hope. The human had not demanded anything, threatened anyone, or shown any signs of deception. The vote would be close, but for the first time in galactic history, there was a real possibility that humanity might be welcomed rather than rejected. The test had been passed, but the real challenge would be convincing enough representatives to take the risk. The future of human galactic relations would be decided in the next few hours, and everyone knew that this decision would change the galaxy forever. The voting chamber on Concordia Station was tenser than it had ever been in galactic history. 347 representatives sat in their assigned seats, each holding a device that would register their decision. The future of humanity hung in the balance. Ambassador Jin-A watched the vote tally appear on the central display. The numbers climbed slowly as each representative made their choice. For humanity, 192 votes. Against humanity, 155 votes. The margin was closer than anyone had hoped, but it was enough by 37 votes. The Galactic Council had agreed to open formal diplomatic relations with humanity. The chamber erupted in a mixture of cheers, protests, and nervous discussions. Representatives who had voted yes looked relieved, while those who had voted no appeared worried about the consequences. Chancellor Kongmin stood at his podium, his face dark with anger. This is a mistake that will haunt the galaxy, he declared. When Humans show their true nature. We will all regret this decision. History will judge us as fools. But Elder Wu Jin raised his hand for silence. The decision has been made, he said firmly. Now we must work together to ensure this new relationship succeeds. Fear has guided us for too long. It is time to try hope. Instead, the formal invitation was drafted within hours. Earth would be welcome to establish an embassy on Concordia. Stationed human ships would be granted safe passage through neutral space. Corridors. A new chapter in galactic history was beginning. Dongwu was chosen as humanity's first official ambassador to the galaxy. The selection seemed perfect. A Marine who had learned diplomacy represented everything hopeful about human nature. His first official act was to invite a delegation of council representatives to visit Earth. The invitation both terrified and excited many species. The idea of actually traveling to the legendary Death World was almost unthinkable, but curiosity was stronger than fear. A delegation of 12 representatives from different species volunteered for the historic mission. Commander Teho volunteered immediately. He had been the first to make contact with humans and wanted to see their homeworld. Dr. So Young also joined the mission, feeling grateful to the species that had saved her life. Captain Mi Young completed the Alteron representation. The journey to Earth took 3 months using the fastest available ships. The delegation spent the time learning basic human language and studying everything known about human culture. They were as prepared as anyone could be for visiting humanity's homeworld. What they found when they arrived challenged every assumption they had made about humans and their planet. Yes, Earth was dangerous by galactic standards. The weather was violent, the animals were predatory, and many plants were toxic, but it was also incredibly beautiful. The delegation was amazed by Earth's diversity. Vast oceans covered most of the planet, while continents showed every type of environment imaginable. Mountains touched the clouds while valleys stretched beyond the horizon. The variety was stunning. More importantly, they met humans from every part of society they visited. Schools where human children learned mathematics, science, and cooperation. They watched teachers patiently helping students understand difficult concepts. The patience and care shown to the young impressed every alien visitor. They toured hospitals where human doctors worked around the clock to heal others. The medical facilities were advanced, but what struck the aliens most was the compassion shown to patients. Humans seemed to genuinely care about relieving suffering even for strangers. The delegation attended cultural events that showcased human creativity. Museums displayed art that expressed complex emotions through color and form. Concert halls filled with music that could make listeners feel joy, sadness, or hope. Theaters presented stories that explored what it meant to be human. They even met human soldiers and learned that these warriors were trained not just to fight, but to protect and serve their communities. The military bases they visited were focused on defense and disaster relief rather than conquest. Dr. So Young was particularly interested in human medical practices. She worked alongside human doctors for a week and was amazed by their dedication to saving lives regardless of a patient's background or ability. To pay, Commander Teho spent time with human engineers and was impressed by their focus on solving problems that helped everyone. Human technology was designed to improve life rather than control others. Captain Mi Young studied human agriculture and was fascinated by their sustainable farming methods. Humans had learned to work with their environment rather than against it, producing enough food for billions while protecting natural ecosystems. The delegation visited human communities around the globe. They saw cities where millions of people lived together peacefully despite coming from different backgrounds. They witnessed rural areas where humans worked together to maintain their environment. What surprised them most was human diversity. Earth contained hundreds of different cultures, languages, and traditions, yet humans had learned to celebrate these differences rather than fight over them. The real revelation came when they attended a United Nations session and watched human representatives from different countries debate and negotiate. These humans had once fought wars against each other, but had learned to resolve conflicts through discussion rather than violence. Ambassador Dongwu explained that humans had indeed been violent in their past, but had evolved beyond that. They had learned that cooperation achieved more than conquest, that diversity made them stronger, not weaker. The delegation returned to Concordia Station 6 months later with a report that shocked the galactic Council their findings showed that humans were not the monsters of legend but potential teachers for the rest of the galaxy. Within 2 years, human scientists were collaborating with alien researchers on projects ranging from terraforming to quantum mechanics. Human engineers were helping improve space travel efficiency across multiple star systems. Human doctors were sharing their knowledge of treating injuries and diseases that affected various species. The medical advances came from combining human adaptability with alien technology, creating treatments that neither species could have developed alone. Most surprisingly, human military advisors were being requested by peaceful worlds who wanted to learn defensive strategies that did not require aggression. Dongwu's model of warrior diplomat became popular throughout the galaxy. Many species began developing their own versions of soldiers trained in both combat and conflict resolution. The idea of strength through restraint spread to military academies across known space. Human teachers were invited to alien worlds to share educational methods that encourage creativity and critical thinking. Human artists collaborated with alien creators, producing works that expressed universal themes of hope, courage, and unity. The transformation was remarkable. The species that had once been considered the greatest threat to galactic peace had become one of its strongest advocates. Human colonies were established, not as conquests but as partnerships with existing civilizations. Trade relationships flourished as humans shared their resources and knowledge while learning from alien technologies. The economic benefits flowed in all directions, creating prosperity that lifted entire star systems. Ambassador Dongwu often spoke at ceremonies welcoming new species to the galactic community. His message was always the same: real strength comes from building bridges, not walls. The strongest person in the room is often the one who chooses not to fight. The galaxy had learned that fear could blind entire civilizations to opportunities for friendship. The species they had dreaded meeting had instead become their greatest allies, proving that understanding was more powerful than assumption. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not as conquerors but as protectors, teachers, and friends. The universe was safer because humans chose to use their strength to help rather than harm.